Yo, welcome back to the channel. It's Buschy. Today, we're going over the one-year Red Wings roster. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button and subscribe for more hockey content. So what do I mean by one-year Red Wings? Pretty self-explanatory. A Red Wings player that only played 1 year with the team, we're going to make a whole roster full of them. Now, I'm going to try and make them as competitive as possible. There was 3 rules with this. 1, they had to only play 1 year with the Red Wings. Number 2, they had to at least play 1 game with the team. Number 3, they could be acquired via trade, free agency, the draft, any of them. What I did is I went from 2021 and went back in time until I had enough players to fill out a roster. I had to go farther back than you'd expect, mostly because of the goalies. I went back to around 1997, so in between 97 and 2021. Yes, there is a player on this roster from last year's squad. You probably know who it is. I will say, I break 2 of my rules slightly, just a little bit. There's reasoning for it, and we're going to go over that when we get to those players. So let's get down to it. You got another Excel sheet from Buschy. I love doing them. They're not going anywhere, so get used to them. Just like our original 6 draft, there's going to be some reveals. Some of these guys are probably pretty obvious. Some of them aren't going to be. If you think I missed anybody, comment below. Let me know who you think I should have put in there. I don't think I missed anybody in between 1997 to 2021. I think I got everybody. If you think there's somebody on the roster that shouldn't be, or somebody that isn't on the roster that should be, let me know in the comments. First up, we have Mr. Ottawa Senators himself, Daniel Alfredsson, who signed a 1-year, $5.5 million contract in 2014. Alfie played 68 games for the Red Wings. He had 49 points. He was leading the team as a 40-year-old in a year where Pavel Datsyuk and Henrik Zetterberg both were dealing with injuries and depth was an issue. Story time. I actually feel like I bought the first Red Wings Daniel Alfredsson jersey ever. I still got it upstairs. I mean, look at this bad boy. Boom. And the best thing was, the Grand Rapids Griffins actually had an exhibition game at WFCU Center in Windsor, where me and Bobo live. And guess who was there? Mr. Kenny Holland himself, just sitting up at the top, not even in the press box, all the way at the top in the seats. And I went over there wearing my Daniel Alfredsson Red Wings jersey just after he got signed, and he was shocked. He was like, hey, how did you get that? First preseason game for the Red Wings, I grabbed one because I love Daniel Alfredsson. That's why he's number 1 on this list. And obviously, that was Alfie's last year in the NHL. He didn't retire as a Red Wing, though. It was his last season, but he retired on a 1-day contract with the Senators and has one of the coolest things that I think teams need to do more of. He actually took warm-ups in an actual game with the Senators. Got a standing ovation, took part in warm-ups, was skating around with the Senators jersey again. I think teams need to do that for a player of his caliber. Our number 1 center is going to be Brad Richards. Richards was signed as a free agent in 2016. He signed a 1-year, $3 million contract with Detroit. He was meant to shore up their centerman position to play in the top 6, really, and he kind of disappointed. He only had 10 goals. The only good memory I have of Brad Richards on the Red Wings is the Stadium Series game against the Avalanche. The actual game itself wasn't even what I cared about. I wanted to see the alumni game, Steve Yzerman scoring on Patrick Waugh. It was awesome. But in the actual game, Richards scored with about a minute left to win the game for the Red Wings, wearing that interesting jersey, which I really, really like, that Stadium Series jersey. A lot of people don't. I'm a fan of it. And that was the last year that Richards played in the NHL. He retired as a Red Wing. He definitely fell off because a few years prior, there was a bidding war for him in free agency, which the Rangers won. We all knew this guy was coming. Marian Hossa, 2009 Red Wings. He signed a 1-year, $7.45 million contract with the Wings, coming from Pittsburgh, who the Red Wings had just beat in the Stanley Cup final. Ironically, I don't really want to talk about this too much, but the Penguins beat the Red Wings in 2009, and Hossa was on the wrong end of it again. In the regular season, he was incredible. 40 goals, played with Pavel Datsyuk a lot. He was a natural scorer, and he played with the Red Wings, and he looked amazing. When we talk about the playoffs, it was a totally different animal. He only scored 6 goals. Fun fact, though, he only scored in 3 games. There was 3 games where he scored 2 goals each, and they were all game 4s. One thing that you got to remember with Marian Hossa, everybody was crapping all over him. Red Wings fans wanted him gone because he didn't produce in the playoffs. What you have to remember is his shoulder was made of linguine that year. He had shoulder surgery in the offseason. There's always going to be the debate. Who should they have kept, Hossa or Franzen? We know that they kept Franzen. Everything else played out the way it did. But What if they kept Marian Hossa? And Hossa went on to sign with the Chicago Blackhawks, and he won 3 Stanley Cups. So the what ifs for the Red Wings are astounding. Next up, a little bit of a blast from the past. On our second line left wing slot, we have Ray Whitney, who signed a $3 million contract with the Red Wings per season for 4 years back in 2003. Whitney put up 43 points in 67 games, which is pretty impressive for playing on the second line on a stacked Red Wings team. But what we have to remember is this was right before the first lockout. When the salary cap was implemented, Whitney was one of the players that were bought out. In the years prior and after being with the Red Wings, Whitney was a perennial 20-goal scorer. Looking at this list so far, we have players that have been good their whole careers. Richards and Whitney weren't that great with the Red Wings, but I built this roster looking at these players like they're in their prime. Because once we get really far down this list, there are some slim pickings. Our second line centerman is Dallas Stars legend Mike Modano, who signed a 1-year deal back in 2010 to be with the Red Wings, $1.25 million for the contract. Mo played 40 games for the Red Wings. He only had 15 points, 4 goals, and unfortunately had a skate cut to the wrist, which ended his season. When I say ended his season, we've already talked about this on the Buschy and Bobo podcast. Go check it out. Mike Babcock did not play him in his 1500th game. He ended his career with 1499. I'm sure Mike Modano has moved on now, but at the time that had the sting. Our second line right wing is the first time that I'm going to maybe break my rules here. It's Thomas Vanek. Thomas Vanek played 2 one-year stints with the Red Wings. In 2016, he signed a 1-year, $2.6 million contract, and in 2018, he signed a 1-year, $3 million contract. And for reasons I'll never understand, looking back, I have no idea why I bought this, but check this out. What am I doing? In both stints with the Red Wings, Thomas Vanek was a really good player. For a second and third line guy, he played about 60 games per season, 15, 16, 17 goals, around that area, and around 40 points. He was honestly probably my second favorite player to watch in a shootout. Just when he would do that weird around the world, when he'd take his stick, put it all the way around the puck, and then just snipe one top shelf, he had the weirdest shot. His hands were like this close together, like he was carrying a baton. Vanek's second stint in Detroit ended up being his last as he retired a Detroit Red Wing. Now this is where things start to get dicey because my third line left winger is Erik Cole. He was brought into the Red Wings at the trade deadline in 2015 for Matthias Backman, Matthias Janmark, and a third round pick. He only played 11 games as a Red Wing. He scored 3 goals and 3 assists, had 6 points before a career-ending neck injury. Now you're probably wondering, Buschy, why do you have Erik Cole on here? Like I said, I'm not going off of what they did that season. I was going off of what type of player they were, or honestly, what the Red Wings thought they would be. In Erik Cole's prime, he was a 60-point player. He was a top 6 forward. I'll take him on my third line. Speaking of horrible trades, our third line center is David Legwand. At the 2014 trade deadline, Legwand was brought into Detroit, and going the other way was Calle Jarnkrok, Patrick Eaves, and a third-round pick. And in my opinion, one of the worst trades that Ken Holland has ever made. At the time, the Red Wings had a lot of centerman injuries, and Legwand was there to patch the hole. From the trade deadline to the end of the regular season, Legwand played 21 games and had 11 points. In the playoffs, he played all 5 games and had 0 points and was just invisible. In the next offseason, he signed with the Ottawa Senators and played one more season after that with the Buffalo Sabres before retiring. This guy's a bit of an enigma, Damien Brunner. He was brought in as a free agent in 2013, which you will remember was another half season from the lockout. He played in Switzerland with Henrik Zetterberg while the lockout was going on. The Red Wings signed him to a 1-year $925K deal. Maybe it was Zetterberg that brought him over because honestly, Brunner played really well with the Red Wings. I know I've shown you guys 2 jerseys of random Red Wings that I've had. What if I told you I used to have a Damien Brunner Red Wings jersey? And what if I told you that Bobo still has it? Maybe I'll get him to wear it on the pod next time. Check it out. In that lockout shortened season, Brunner played 44 games and he had 26 points playing on the third line with Gustav Nyquist and Joachim Andersen. I remember watching those guys in the playoffs. That was the magical run the Red Wings had where they almost made it into the third round, but blew it to the Blackhawks, being up 3-1 and then losing. And the Blackhawks went on to win the Stanley Cup with our top right winger, Marian Hossa. But Brunner flourished in the playoffs. He played 14 games and had 9 points. Probably the coolest memory that I have of Damien Brunner was his overtime goal against the Ducks at the Joe. That was an incredible atmosphere, and it was one of the coolest goals ever, with Nyquist going in on the breakaway, Hiller making the poke check, and Brunner just sitting there with a wide open net. What confused me a little bit was that Brunner didn't re-sign with the Red Wings. They offered him a 2 or 3 year deal, but he decided to go to the Devils, and his career quickly went downhill with New Jersey. Over the next 2 seasons with the Devils, he played 77 games combined and only had 32 points. He was a healthy scratch a ton, and he asked to be released from his contract, and he went back to Switzerland. You ready for the grind line 1 year .0? Because here we go. Because my fourth line left winger is Wendell Clark. At the 1999 trade deadline, the Red Wings brought in 4 players: Wendell Clark, Ulf Samuelsson, Chris Chelios, and one more player that we're going to talk about in a bit. The Red Wings traded Kevin Hodgson and a second-round pick for Wendell Clark and a 6th. Clark only played 12 games with the Red Wings and bagged 6 points. The next season, he went on to split time with Chicago and ended his career with the Toronto Maple Leafs, where he played a chunk of his career. When someone says Wendell Clark, I think Toronto. Another player that didn't really do anything with the Red Wings, but in his career, he was very, very good. 800 games, almost 600 points, and almost 1,700 penalty minutes in his career. Yeah, that's who I want on my fourth line, and one of the best mustaches to boot. What else do you need to have a really good fourth line? You need a pest. And I have the pests of all pests, Steve Ott. In the 2017 season, Steve Ott signed a 1-year deal with the Detroit Red Wings. He played 42 games, had 6 points, 63 penalty minutes, but he was traded at the deadline for a 6th-round pick to the Montreal Canadiens, where he ended up ending his career. Fun fact is Steve Ott played for my hometown, the Windsor Spitfires, right across the river from Detroit. He said it was always a dream to play for the Red Wings, and you know what? It would have been my dream too if I was any good. Rounding out our forward group and our fourth line is none other than Dallas Drake. This is the only other player that I tweaked my rules a little bit, because Dallas Drake was drafted by the Red Wings in 1989. You remember that draft with Fedorov, Lidstrom, Konstantinov, Bob Bugner, Mike Sillinger? Dallas Drake was a part of that, maybe one of the best drafts of all time in sports. In 2007-2008, Dallas Drake signed a 1-year deal with the Red Wings, a veteran minimum of $550K. I don't think Dallas Drake is really worried about how much he made that year because they won the Stanley Cup. He had 6 points in 65 games in the regular season, but in the playoffs, he was a regular. He played almost every game. I'll always remember in the conference finals against the Dallas Stars where Dallas Drake actually lined up Stefan Robidas and turned him into a chalk outline a few times in that series. And who could forget Lidstrom passing him the Stanley Cup? It was one of those cool moments where he had never won a cup his whole career. And finally, right at the end, Dallas Drake gets the storybook ending because he retired right after the season. Our top 6 defensemen are going to be very interesting because we're looking at Fredrik Olofsson. In a 2001 and 2002 season, Freddie Olofsson was brought in on a 1-year deal, $750K. In the regular season, he played really well. In the playoffs, he was a regular. One of my favorite memories of Freddie Olofsson was Game 3 against the Colorado Avalanche, the overtime winner. The joy on that guy's face, the dejection of Patrick Waugh was always fun for me to watch. After his contract ran out, he went back to Anaheim where he had played for a while. This one might come as a shock to you, but Darian Hatcher is on my top line with Freddie Olofsson. In 2003, Hatcher was brought in to the Red Wings as a free agent, a 5-year, $30 million contract, $6 million a year. Hatcher was injured for most of his first season. He played 15 games and only had 4 points, 8 penalty minutes. He did play in the playoffs where the Red Wings took out the Predators and then lost to the Calgary Flames in the second round. Like Ray Whitney, Darian Hatcher was bought out when the salary cap was implemented after the lockout. The reason that he's on this team is that Darian Hatcher in his prime was a very, very good defenseman. During the clutch and grab era before the 2004-2005 lockout, Hatcher was good for 30 points a year, and he'd probably get 150 to 160 penalty minutes. He was a tough guy, a hard hitter, but the game had passed him by when the new rules came out. Another interesting addition to my blue line is Ruslan Saleh. Saleh signed a 1-year deal in 2011 to go to the Red Wings on a $750,000 contract. Rusty was a regular in the regular season and in the playoffs. Not really a big point producer guy, but he was great on that bottom pair. The one thing that I remember about Saleh was there was one game in the regular season where Zetterberg scored in overtime, but Saleh set him up on this perfect shot pass tip-in goal. Awesome. It was at home, and it was one of the coolest things that I remember about Ruslan Saleh. That was his last year in the NHL as he went overseas and played in the KHL. Unfortunately, he lost his life in the plane crash that Lokomotiv had in the KHL. The next player on my list is Marek Zidlitsky. He's the only defenseman on my roster that was acquired at the trade deadline. In 2015, the Red Wings traded a 3rd-round pick to bring him in. Zidlitsky played 21 games for the Red Wings and had 11 points. He was ineffective in the playoffs. He didn't get any points in 6 games as the Red Wings battled to the Tampa Bay Lightning. He went on to play one more season in the NHL with the New York Islanders before hanging up the skates. Here's my 2021 guy, John Merrill. He signed a 1-year, $850K contract with the Red Wings. He played really well for the Wings at the start and into the middle of the season. At the trade deadline, he was traded to the Montreal Canadiens for a 5th-round pick. And the one thing that really bothers me is that John Merrill was at times a healthy scratch for the Canadiens as they made their march to the Stanley Cup final, ultimately losing to Tampa Bay. This guy was one of our better defensemen, and he was a healthy scratch on a playoff team. Hopefully the defense is better this year. I know a lot of you are going to be head scratching on this one, but Carlo Koliakovo is my 6th defenseman. In 2013, he signed a 2-year free agent contract worth $2.5 million per season. Again, this was the lockout shortened season. He was hurt for most of it. He only played 6 games in the regular season. He played most games in the playoffs, but the next offseason he was bought out. He was expendable and they let him go. And if you couldn't tell, he wasn't the biggest fan of Mike Babcock at the time either. He's with TSN now. You've heard some of the stories. Go check it out. Yeah, so hey guys, we're a little bit thin in net, and this is why I had to go back pretty far, because our starter is Ken Reggett. In the year 2000, Reggett was signed as a free agent on a 2-year deal to back up Chris Osgood. He ended up playing 29 games for the Red Wings, and he had a .266 goals against average. At the time, scoring was up. That's actually not bad numbers for a backup goaltender, and that's why he's going to start for us. Reggett only lasts 1 year in Detroit. He signed an IHL contract with the Manitoba Moose where he ended his career. Our backup goaltender is the 4th player that the Red Wings traded for at the 1999 trade deadline. It's Bill Ranford. The Red Wings goaltending situation back then was a little bit volatile, and Scotty Bowman brought in Ranford because he was a proven goaltender. He won the Conn Smythe Trophy in 1990 for the Edmonton Oilers. Billy Boy only played 4 games for the Red Wings, but get this, a 197 goals against average. I'll take it. Put him in, he's my backup. Those are solid numbers. And for everybody asking, hey, who did we miss out on? These are the guys that didn't make my roster, but they're the ones that maybe you think they should have. So let's go through them really, really quickly. Bobby Ryan, Steve Thomas, Scott Wilson, Thomas Sandstrom, Fabian Brunstrom, Billy Leno, Brad May, Kyle Calder, Andre Nestrasil, Dmitry Bykov, Kent Huskins, Yuri Slegger, Ulf Samuelson, Mike Commodore, Dmitry Marinov, Danny Markov, Corey Cross, and Mark Lamoth. These are all the players that I found that only played 1 year for the Red Wings. Out of all these guys, there's only a few that I could make a case for putting on that roster. Number 1, Bobby Ryan. If we're looking at their careers, Bobby Ryan had a really, really good career. He hasn't signed with anybody yet. He's still a free agent at the moment of this video. He may end up with the Red Wings again. The only other forward that I really considered was Brad May to put on the 4th line, but I went with Wendell Clark instead. There's obviously kind of some funny ones. I mean, Steve Thomas had a really, really good career, but he only played 1 year with the Wings and wasn't that great. Scott Wilson played like 3 games or something crazy for the Red Wings. Felt like he was there for 2 seconds and he was gone. Thomas Sandstrom was a part of the 97 Stanley Cup team. You could throw him in there if you really wanted to. Fabian Brunstrom and Billy Leno might as well be twins. You know, they brought them in on 1-year deals to see if they could do anything. Billy Leno ended up playing really well for the Flyers. How about 1 games played Stanley Cup champion in 2002, Yuri Slegger? You heard me. He played 1 game in the final. It was the one where Yuri Fisher got suspended for cross-checking. Slegger played the last game against the Hurricanes and won the Stanley Cup. Or maybe you want a little bit of some orange fro from Mike Commodore. If Mike Babcock's coaching this team, he's definitely not a part of it. The only other goaltender I could have considered was Mark Lamoth in that time frame. He only played a few games for the Red Wings and was their 3rd goalie. So there you have it. Check out that roster. Let me know. Did I get it all right? Did I get any that maybe should have been changed? Because I honestly look at that roster. I like the forwards. The defense, it might do. The goaltending, they're the older guys. I never really grew up watching Ken Reggett and Bill Ranford, to be really honest with you. There wasn't a lot of turnover with Red Wings goalies. I think we know that. So thanks for watching, guys. I know it's a snooze fest out there. There's not a whole lot going on in the hockey world, especially for the Red Wings. Something I want to make clear. I'm a Red Wings fan, obviously. I'm in the dressing room. Al Sabatka dropped the keys. I have him. I just make sure he doesn't come back at one point. But check out the rest of our content. I do a lot of Red Wings stuff because I'm a Red Wings fan. But Bobo, he's a Canucks guy. He likes some quirky things too. Go check out his center ice logo rankings. It's an interesting video. Maybe you'll learn something. We also want to thank everybody for all the support on the last video. 10,000 views? Are you kidding me? I never would have thought we would ever have had that when we started this. So we really, really appreciate it. We don't expect it. It's a lot of fun for us to do this, and that's what we're going to continue to do. We don't have a schedule. We have jobs. It's something that we're passionate about. It's a lot of fun to make these videos. So if you guys really, really do enjoy it, please like, comment, subscribe. I love reading the comments. That's the fun of it. I love arguing with people or agreeing with people either way. Everybody has their opinion, and that's one of the coolest things about this platform. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter if you haven't already. Check out the website, www.healthyscratch.ca, for more hockey content. Until next time, guys, it's Buschy. We'll see you in the next one.